Hey, I'm Nick Williams, and I'm here with Scott Helmbrecht with Schaefer Financial. And Scott is our resident annuity expert, and he's here to show you how to close annuities, and most importantly, how to close them without it draining your time, without it being this big monster that you have to tackle, and also that that you would still be paid full commissions. So that's important. So it's time and money. But Scott, how are you doing?
Good. 15 below in Minnesota today. So let's talk about some hot products to warm it up around here.
Hey, yeah, hey, that's a great segue there. But I will mention that it's been like in the mid to high 60s here in South Carolina.
Yeah, I was in Charlotte last week, and on Tuesday my phone was still stuck on Charlotte. So I'm like, it's 63. I'm like, no, it's definitely 10 degrees out. So
yeah, I do that when I travel as well. But I want to address it from the point that the agent has the client and they have somebody who's receptive to talking about annuities. Now, what information do you want? What are you going to do? How are you going to help them? And then maybe we could talk a little bit about how much money they'll make, but primarily how you're going to help them close these deals. So I guess I'll start with, and we can talk about Schaefer Financial, that it is a excellent operation and it's an excellent company, but could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So Schaefer Financial Group, the way the IMO world is right now is a lot of people work together. And so what that really means for the actual agent, the writing agent, is that when you call me, I can basically be a fiduciary marketer. I have the ability to do case design I have 60 different carriers. So I have 670 different products. And so it's not that you have to learn all of them. It's just, what I'm saying that for is for the fact that when we do case design, you have the top products in the industry. It's not like you have to push this mid-level carrier because we have to hit some goals with our contracts or anything like that. It's like you're dealing with, with this operation, you're dealing with the top case designs for the top products that fit for your client solution. And so that's really what Schaefer Financial Group has been built on, is the fact that we wanted to be able to do the best for everything. It's kind of like having a final expense contract and you have 40 carriers that beat you, but you're out there with your one screwdriver. We don't have to deal with one carrier. We're dealing with the whole market. So to kind of get into what you're saying, Nick, as far as you've already asked your discovery questions, you found out the client may have, especially your T65 clients, they may have an old 401k or a pension, they're just retiring, or they have that excess money sitting in the bank, whether it's qualified or non. Really what I'm doing is I'm telling agents, don't try to do all that on your own. What Nick's saying, the program that we worked out together, you're not taking a haircut on your commissions. And so you don't have to feel like all of a sudden someone's going to Sherpa this deal for you and you're going to lose a bunch of commission because of it. No, I want, no question's a silly question. And so if you think that you have a client like, hey, 67-year-old, she says that she's got a pension, she's got some retirement, she's working on this, just call me up. I will give you the additional discovery questions to ask that client. Typically what I want is, I really pride myself in being able to tear apart any statement. And if there's a way to better the client situation, not only am I going to show you how to do it, I'm going to show you what product with what carrier does it and how to position it to the client in order to get it done. And so that's really the value of what we're bringing to the table, is being able to, you're asking the discovery questions and you're finding the money, but then what do you do from that point? Instead of stumbling and saying, I think an annuity is an option for you. You still don't know at that point. It's bring the situation to me. I'm gonna talk you through it, walk you through it. If we have some additional discovery questions we have to ask with the client, that's fine. Just like when I'm dealing with that on the agent level or my personal clients, nobody gets offended by saying, hey, I have a specialist in our office that does nothing but retirement planning and safe money solutions. Do you mind if I run a couple of these scenarios by them and to get back to us? No one's going to say, well, you're an idiot for not knowing this information. It's like they respect the fact that you're not making it up on the fly. You're going to get the real information for them. And the worst case scenario, we're going to say, hey, Mr. Client, what you have going for you right now is the best solution. I wouldn't change a thing. And that's going to do nothing but make the client smile. You're not going to get the case, but it reinforces the client that they did the right thing. Now, even if they are in a similar annuity situation, but it's an older product, and with the evolution of these products, they get better and better with the offerings that are out there. So, what if we can better that situation? That's where I come into play. I can tear things apart. We're not just rolling other products to make a commission for you, but it can show you, based off of the new needs for the client right now today, what we're trying to accomplish and what product is gonna solve for them. So that's really what we're working on. We're not trying to contract you with 60 different carriers or anything like that. It's, at any given time, there's those 3 or 4 carriers that sit on the front of my desk that are your top accumulation plays, or maybe they're looking for an income rider or a death benefit rider feature or whatnot. We talk through that, but there's not one product for every solution. And the carriers, they raise rates as they get more aggressive. They're hungry. They want money in the company. So we're using a lot of those carriers that are hungry because they're giving more back to the actual end client than some of your bigger carriers are out there.
Yeah. Now, Scott, as far as documentation, it would be nice if the agent could get the statements, but
Right.
That's not always the case. But we do want to know the type of product, whether it's qualified money, non-qualified money, or whether it's qualified money in an annuity or a CD. But generally, what would be the basic information that you need in order to put together a deal, make a recommendation? Yeah.
Sure. So that basic information, you're right. It's not everybody is gonna, especially if you're finding that as an alternative for another reason why you're in the home. And a lot of people aren't just gonna say, here you go, I trust you, take all my statements and then get back to me. And so what I recommend is if you're close enough by where you can get a copy of it, that's awesome. Shoot it to me. I don't care if the client's name and address on there. All I care about is the numbers. So scan and shoot that to me. The other thing you can do is, everybody's out there with your iPad Pro or your cell phone. See if you can take a picture of it. Mm-hmm. As long as I can zoom in on the picture and I can see the meat and potato numbers on there, what I'm looking for is not necessarily just to be basic on it. Qualified money is, think of it as your IRA, your old 401k. It's pre-tax money that you never pay taxes on. That is the government's allowing you to defer the tax liability until you make a withdrawal off of that. So that's what is qualified money. So old pensions, old 401ks, 403bs, SEP IRAs, traditional IRAs, those products are in that IRA option. And it's not, you don't have to be too old or too young in order to move an IRA. Non-qualified money is money that you got in a paycheck, you pay taxes on it, and you put it in the bank, and maybe it grew. And so that's money that you already paid taxes on. And so I'm not necessarily concerned about really which type of money it is right off the bat, because we're really looking at what's the client trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. You had some money, all your money, 80-year-old client, all of her money was in a brokerage account. Well, Christmas of 18, how did that go for you? The S&P lost 22%. How did that make you feel, being 79 years old at that point and your accounts came down 22%? I don't advocate, because I work with advisors out there have managed money. I'm not advocating for everybody needs to be totally in or totally out of the market. It's got to be blended based on your portfolio.
And we do have compliance, or we do have the
Suitability.
Suitability. Thank you. We do have suitability. So as insurance agents, we probably have to answer to a higher standard than most of the other sectors of the financial industry, because a stockbroker could put 100% of somebody's assets in the stock market and that would be perfectly fine. But we're not able to do that. So that's important. But that's later in the process. So that's not up front.
That's later in the process.
But we do have to be consider that's a big deal. So we're always going to be, by the sheer nature of suitability, we're always going to have to leave the client in a good position. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to explain that is that insurance carriers are the ones that issue annuity products. And so annuities aren't life insurance products, but they're issued with guarantees like life insurance is. Mm-hmm. And so annuity carriers, life insurance carriers, are very conservative. And so with their conservativeness and their investment strategies, they want to make sure they're not putting that client in a bad position. And so what that really means is if you run into a client and they have $100,000, the insurance carrier is not going to let you put $85,000 in lock it up into an annuity, and you leave them $15,000 to pay for all of their emergencies and the roof that blows off their house possibly. Mm-hmm. So that's where I come into play as well. I don't show you how to get around suitability, but I know the suitability forms like the back of my hand. And so it's really a matter of when we're walking through the process, what's that client's, the key things are what's that client's monthly income and what are their monthly expenses. You want to have a positive income number there. You don't want to have them have a, spending more than they're bringing in monthly.
And so also in our communications, like recently we've discussed a case, and it's a situation where you can eliminate my wasting time by saying it's just not going to pass suitability.
Exactly.
And then we can move on. So that's a very valuable tool, because what will happen is these agents will get a lead for an annuity, call it a lead, or they'll have a prospect and they'll find out they have money. Yeah. And when they go down that road of investigating annuities, they can spend days and do spend days. And the reason is because they're looking at maybe $150,000 and the average commission would be in the neighborhood of 6.57%. Would you
Correct.
say, Scott?
Yep, exactly. For a 10-year product, yep.
Yes, and so they're going to turn over every nook and cranny in the annuity industry, finding the right product. But can you comment on that as well?
Yeah, that's you guys have your full day set with, leads, appointments. You guys are generating your income from actually closing deals. And so if you run into that same $150,000 client and then you spend the next 4 days saying, I don't need any help, I'm going to do all my own market research and I'm going to spin my wheels, there's a good chance at the end of 4 days, you're going to throw in the towel and then start booking appointments for your Medicare leads again. because with a lot of that it's not to say that not everybody is an annuity prospect, but you're right. It's if that money is locked up in a way that maybe there's a surrender penalty on it, or maybe that client just doesn't have enough. Like, unfortunately, I run into a lot of 62-year-olds that have $60,000 in a 401k and they're retiring to activate Social Security. And the agent calls me and says, what do we do with the $60,000? And I'm like, this person's got $5,000 in their bank account. We can't do a whole lot with it because they're like one medical emergency away from having to drain their retirement assets. And so some of that is, it's if you're, the biggest thing is if you're doing what's right by the client, you're asking everybody the questions, not just asking the people that you think may have money. You're really surprised on how many people don't lay things out for you. And so if you have the same process, you're asking everybody the questions, you're telling people what other services you provide or that your agency provides, we being your agency back office, what services you bring to the table. If you're not asking those discovery questions, you're going to run into a lot less people out there that even put the money on your radar.
Yes, and I believe also again, having, and that's a great way to term this, you being the back office, and that's really what this amounts to, is as an agent, for those watching this, you have an expert that's going to go over all the rates, because it's always about rates, surrender charges, it's all about suitability, it's about does this make sense for this client, and what should I do? You can burn so much time, or you can just call Scott, and that will save you a ton of time. And it may be the questions you're asking are not the right questions. So it might be there's a whole different avenue. I think we talked the other day about utilizing life insurance versus the annuity to create an estate versus just trying to pass cash, or say pass the asset. So, but there's just so many things, and Scott's on the ball. I mean, he knows what he's doing. This is what he does all day long. So Scott, let's talk about the process. They acquire a client or a prospect. We hope we have a client, but they acquire a prospect. They send the data to you, or they call you up. Let's talk about a flow that would make sense for you, because you can't answer 50 questions every day from one person about one client. What makes sense for you to streamline this for you so that you can best help the client, or so you can best help the agent?
Sure. So the easiest way to say that is, if you're running into the agent that runs into their first prospect in this scenario versus the same agent that runs into the 30th prospect, by the time you get to that second or third one, we've already had enough conversations where that, hey, the first two people, I forgot to ask these additional questions. And so I'm not concerned about you coming to the table and you knowing everything about that client initially. Even if it's something that you want to talk through and say, hey, I have a client, don't call me up and say, hey, I got a client with an old 403B. What should we do? I'm like, well, is the client retired? Is a 55-year-old with a 401k that's actively contributing at their job? I'm like, we can't do a whole lot with that if they're actively contributing and they're getting a match, things like that. They're building that at that aspect. But once that client turns 59 and a half, we do have the ability, even though they're currently still at that employer, we do have the ability to move a portion of that to a safe money alternative.
Mm-hmm. And some companies allow did they call it an in-service rollover or something of that nature?
In-service distribution, but it's gonna be a rollover. It's not creating a taxable liability.
Yes. So it may be a situation, I don't mean to cut you off there, it may be a situation where you think it won't work.
Yep.
And now you find out, well, it's the person's corporate 401k or something, but there may be, in the terminology of the contract, and you and I talked about one of these cases recently as well, Scott, that it may work. So when you think you have nothing, there may actually be something. So we're not trying to create, we're not trying to force things, pound a square peg into a round hole, but there are sometimes options that you may not know exist.
Exactly. And so that's where it's kind of hard on a training video to say, here's every scenario you ever run across. But in that situation, like Nick called me up and said, hey, I got a client that, they're 59 and a half, almost 60. He's looking to, the market's getting a little erratic. They're looking at, putting a portion of that outside of their investment. And so the answer on that one is we actually had them call up their HR department and ask, do I have the ability to do this within my employment contract? And
it's funny. Yeah, what's funny about that is that person worked for the federal government, and that was half $500,000. And what their response was, and I agree with them, I can't rely on my HR department. So they were willing to call they're like, you know what, Nick? I don't think that I can have confidence in what my HR department tells me. In other words, they felt like they could do something based on what somebody told them, and then later they find out that's wrong. It's too late.
Yeah. No, I follow you there.
Federal government, man, federal government.
But that's really, I mean, not to deter people from asking those questions.
Yes.
But that's really what we want to do. So that flow, that process is bring me what you can initially. I'm definitely gonna have more discovery questions for you.
Yes.
But a client's gotta, you have to understand, but two, you have to set the expectation with your client that annuities, unless you're really aggressive at your close rate and you have prospects coming out of your ears, annuities are a 2 or 3 appointment sale.
Yes.
If you're going in there and hard selling these things, you're going to have a lot of people free looking your products because they're like, hey, Joe pushed me into this thing and I find out that I don't want to be a part of it. And so it's definitely, it's about education for the client, but it's also a matter of we need to know enough about the client, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because some people, when they're running into brand new prospects, they'll ask me like, hey, I didn't want to dig into their personal finances. Well, on suitability is going to do it either way. You got to list your net worth. You got to list your monthly income, monthly expenses, and what you have liquid as far as, what's your emergency fund look like. And so it's not a matter of, people have to get over the mindset of like, I didn't want to dig for too much information. It's like, I can't really make a recommendation unless I know what you have going on, and things like that. And so that's where I work one-on-one with coming up with those discovery questions, being able to do that case design. If you can get a copy of a statement or a picture, great. If you can't, we'll still walk through that process. But with that flow, we're going to be able to, say I do the case design, we can make a recommendation. We're going to run those illustrations. We're going to get them back to the client. With any of the annuity carriers, that there is a contracting process there. The one thing that I would put out there is if you're brand new to this side of the market, you're only been dealing with health, only been dealing with med subs, long-term care, you've never written an annuity before, and you're just wanting to know those basics, instead of trying to YouTube it and try to find like the basics on annuities, every state has what's called a 4-hour annuity NAICE course that you're required to take. It's a one-time deal unless you're in California and Texas, then there's additional continuing education. But you have to take that course before you're even allowed to contract with an insurance carrier. I usually send people to whoever does your continuing education, Success CE, WebFX, whatever. It costs you $10 on Success CE. Take the course, and now you have the basics, which you at least have a little bit to be dangerous. And then it's better that you complete that course first, because you want to fill that knowledge.
Well, that should be something that an insurance agent should just get done like now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a matter of, you
don't want to wait till the last minute because you can't write that case.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have so many people that, because it's not to downplay it, but when you're used to only writing mortgage term or final expense, things like that, with a lot of those carriers, you can submit the case and the contracting at the exact same time. They're still going to process the contracting first, but there's no negative to dating them the same day and submitting it at the same time. With an annuity carrier, you're supposed to know what you're selling before you go sell it. And so not only do you have that 4-hour annuity CE, which you fly right by it. So don't think like, oh, this continuing education, it's a one-time lifetime course. But outside of that, when you contract with the annuity carrier, there's actually a product-specific training, which only takes a few minutes, but there's a product-specific training that you're supposed to take with that specific carrier that you're contracting with. So in essence, you know what the background on the product is before you go sell it. And so there's so many times where people say, send me an application. And I'm saying like, well, let's back up the train here a second. Like, there's a contracting piece, and I know you're excited to go write the client, but you got to give yourself about a week and a half to allow for that contracting process to happen before you're allowed to date your application. And so it's not like I was saying earlier, not that we're trying to contract you with multiple carriers, but
so instead of being the FMO that I want to contract as many people as I can, throw it against the wall and see what sticks, you instead are saying, let's find a prospect, get a deal, and see if it makes sense and see where it goes, or which carrier we're going to place it with, do the contracting with that carrier, and then get it placed. And instead, but in up front, the one thing that we want to have done is that 4-hour course. So we would recommend, based on what you're saying and what I believe to be true, is just go get that done today, or this week, or next week, regardless of what's happening. And that's the preparation. And then when you find a case,
absolutely,
we'll get it with Scott. Scott will navigate through the the discovery of what's needed.
The discovery and the case design of the process. See if we have a solution we can recommend.
Yes, and then Scott, let's talk about the case design. And from that point, you would get that information. Okay, so you've done the discovery and maybe an ongoing discovery of information, because it's not just one set of questions. It might be multiple sets of questions that you got to come back and forth between you and the agent. And the agent may have to be communicating with the client as well. So this may be an ongoing discovery process. And then we've nailed it down. We've got a case to put together. We can sell it. Everything looks good. You're going to do what for the agent at that point?
So at that point, everything we want to move forward.
I mean, illustrations or whatever. So I just want to,
Yeah. So we have the illustrations. We're putting it on the client's radar. As far as the contracting piece of it you're talking, we have electronic contracting. So there's no paperwork involved. It's an electronic process. But like what Nick was saying earlier, there's IMOs out there that do nothing except for try to contract everybody with everything, because then you're stuck with, in their web. But in my situation, I don't want to overwhelm my contracting department. So we're only going to work with the carriers you're actually going to sell. Otherwise, all we're doing is, spinning our wheels and wasting all the time.
Yes. And as you said before, there's only at any given time, there's a handful of companies that are going to be the leaders. And a lot of times if you do contract with a bunch of companies, they may not even be the companies that you need that will apply to you as an agent and your clientele. And so you've wasted your time, you've wasted the FMO's time. And possibly when you need an expert, it could work out that now you need an expert. Well, wait a minute, you've contracted with one of these, I won't say shady because that's not right, but one of these companies, one of these FMOs that are just collecting agents, but not offering a real high-end service. And let me tell you something, with annuities, you need a high-end service. And Scott and I have been working together for, I would say, about 8 years, thereabouts.
Yeah.
And I've never been in a situation where I felt Scott was over his head, I just haven't been in a situation in that period of time where I felt that I wasn't getting a professional level of service and good advice. That's what you need. That's what's going to happen. That's what you're going to need to have happen so that you can be successful in placing this case and not wasting your time. But so Scott, we got everything together, and now we've got the illustrations. You're going to send the illustrations to the agent, whatever it may be. If it requires illustrations, it may not always require the illustration, but if it does, and you're going to tell them, here's how you close this. Are you going to go down that road?
Yeah. So a given illustration is going to be, and I'm going to go back for 1 second on what you're talking about earlier. We were talking about, there could be a couple of different lines of questioning, things like that. For some people that are brand new, or they're concentrating on one product line, they might feel like, hey, that sounds like it's too much work. Mm-hmm. Just remember the fact that if you want the easy $200 easy sale, it's there for you. If you want to make the $6,000 to $8,000 deal, It's like, it's basically like, you know, a 3-step process versus a 1-step process. We make it easy for you. So don't ever get in your head that this is too complicated, I'm just going to walk away from it. Because if you're going to do that, go ahead and shoot me that client's name, because I'll call them up, Zoom call them, and close it.
That's right.
You know?
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you get on a conference call on a speaker with a client if they needed it?
Yeah. So what I like to do is I like to set the agent up as, you know, the agent has that point. I'm still their back office, you know, so I might have better flow when it comes to asking that client follow-up questions, things like that. But I don't want to take a Zoom call or a conference call, and this client just says, hey, Sally just told me she's got 30 grand. What should she do with it? Like, I don't want that, you know, because then all of a sudden you're put on the spot, you know. So what I would recommend is let's talk through it. And so maybe you know, Sally client is a real stickler on specific contract details. And like I was saying earlier, you're not going to lose any respect by anybody that says, you know what, I don't know that specific answer, but I know the guys that do. Let's call them up and get the specifics. It's even best if you know you're meeting with that client at 11 o'clock Eastern time. Just set that appointment with me, so that way I can at least be available during that time, rather than, you know, I need Scott right now, because contrary to popular belief, I'm actually helping other agents all day as well.
Yes, yeah, right. In other words, you can't stop everything for one person who might just might have a deal, but you're going to tell them. You're going to give them some talking points to close this as well, correct?
Yeah. So yes. So I went back, but I didn't come back the other direction.
Yes.
So say an illustration, because the illustration's got disclosures and everything else in it. So say an illustration ends up being, sorry, the phone's ringing.
That's all right.
Say an illustration ends up being like 12 pages. What I do is I want to go through that illustration with you before you present it to the client, because I'm going to show you, hey, stick with these 3 pages, put a check mark by them, whatever you want to do, but these are your meat and potato pages. It would definitely be a recommendation for you to read through the entire illustration so you know what's actually in there, but there's no hidden features or anything like that. But it's a matter of, all right, so this carrier takes these allocations and they illustrate 1 per page. I'm just going to tell you, hey, here's the meat and potato pages where you can tell a client, you know, here's how we allocated, here's what it's returning, you know, here's the guarantees on this. If there is an income rider, here's this number to show it to you. So you never go out there. It's typically never going to be a 1-pager when you're talking about accumulation products. But instead of dealing with 16 pages and say, here you go, it's like, here's the 3 meat and potato pages, and here's what's on each page, and here's why I think this is a solution for what we're trying to solve for you, Mr. Client.
And again, I'm going to go back. This 6,000 to 8,000. That's kind of in the range of normal commissions, average commissions. I think you would expect. So, Scott, on the agents, as this is not something they're going to focus on. What I'm trying to get them to do is maybe 1 a quarter, 1 annuity a quarter. Yep. At 100,000 is going to give them somewhere. If again, it's the typical type of indexed type of annuity transaction, normal surrender charges. That's going to be $26,000 a year in commissions, just picking up 1 a quarter. So if the agent can just do this passively in conversations, like, hey, you know, you have a 401k, maybe I can help you with that. You know, however it comes up. But get that information to you, very low stress on everybody, go back and forth, a few questions here or there. Maybe they can place that and make an extra $25,000, $30,000 a year without stressing themselves out, without upsetting the apple cart, without, you know, the apple cart being their normal flow of business.
To put some statistics out there for you, that with the Department of Labor, they say that the average person at retirement has moved career. They say you move careers about 4 to 5 times before you find your forever job, you know, that you retire in. So every time you make that move, that is usually an old retirement plan that's just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that to pick up. Not every annuity has to be $300,000.
Right. Yes.
We do a lot of $30,000 to $50,000 cases.
Yes.
So that's one thing. People moving jobs. The other thing is,
yeah, go ahead, finish, Scott.
I'll say, if you're dealing with T65s, those clients are just about to retire or just recently retired. Your average 401k balance at retirement is $268,000. You know, based on 7% commission, you're looking at, what is that, 18 grand? You're right there. So what Nick's is only talking about $100,000 event or $100,000 case. The average 401k case at retirement is almost 3 times that.
Yes.
And so that's nothing to get scared about either, because it's like, well, this is too much money to deal with. That's why we're walking you through it. It's baby steps.
Yeah, I firmly believe that if an agent is active, they're going to run into these deals. It's just it's a matter of the law of numbers, but they're only going to run into the deals if they have the conversation, which again, that's the other side of the equation. But you work with agents that this is a sideline, and I'm sure that you see agents that close these deals periodically, and they're quite happy to do that, I'm sure. You know? Yeah,
like I've told you before, Nick. You know, I'm not in the health insurance side of the industry, but I have a network of agents that are health and med sup agents where they're doing that year round. But I'm their annuity guy, and so there's a lot of those guys I don't even talk to in the fall during open enrollment, because I know they're busy morning till dark, you know, trying to do that open enrollment process. But it's not a matter of changing up your entire business. It's when you run in that situation, open enrollment is busy. Or if you're doing the enrollment throughout the whole year, when you run into clients that have money, just come up with a system for yourself and put a check mark on those client files.
Yes.
Those are the clients we're coming back to in late January, February, March, and we're getting back in front of, because you said, hey, in the scope of my appointment, I'm here today because of this, but here is everything else I do in financial services.
Yes.
I think you might, I think we might have a solution for you. Let me get back in touch with you after the holidays, and we'll go from there. And that's really all you're doing is setting yourself up.
I want to reiterate that Scott's an expert. So let the expert be your guide in this situation until you get some experience. As Scott said, you get 2, 3, 4 of these, you're maybe 2, 3, 4 times better at it. But in reality, you don't need to be the expert at all, because you have an expert. So it's smart. It's an intelligent approach. And Scott's going to put the deal together for you. He's going to tell you how to sell it. And you're going to get all the commissions, and the numbers we talk about, 6,000. If it's 260,000, that's going to be more like 15,000 potentially in commissions. So this can be very lucrative. It can be a big add-on to your income. So Scott, I think we've covered it. Do you have any additional information that we have not discussed that you'd like to discuss?
The one thing that, when we're talking about on the commission side, those are typically tied to those fixed index annuities.
Yes, correct.
Not every one of your client is, even though fixed index annuities, they have the ability to not see any downside market loss risk at all. Not every client out there, especially your 70 plus client base, that as soon as they hear maybe the word market, there's nothing you can say to change their mind in the fact that even though they're not at risk in the market in our products, they hear the word market and they want nothing to do with it. A lot of those clients have money in bank CDs. And so not every solution has to be a fixed index annuity. If I take a client with 80 grand in bank CDs and they want to keep some of that there, and we have a solution right now, the top multi-year guaranteed annuity. The top, there's no moving parts on it. It's a 5-year guaranteed rate. Right now, the top rate in the industry is 3.7, but your average bank CD in a 5-year is 1.9.
Yes.
And so now, if we can just give them a CD-like return It's a guaranteed rate. It doesn't move. Every year they're going to get the same 3.7 at the end of 5 years. They can move it if they wish.
And we can't help but to get in the sales side of this, can we, Scott? I said we can't help but to get in the sales side of this, but it's true. So when you're out there and you can recognize these things, there's some easy money to be had.
Yeah.
And I always say when I get with clients, I'll tell them, or when this type of conversation pops up, and they mention they're getting 1%, I'll use the terminology. I'll just say that's just not fair. It's just not fair because that 1% is not even keeping pace with inflation.
Yep.
And it's not fair. And that client at that time will normally 9 times out of 10, whether they do business with me or not is irrelevant, but 9 times out of 10, they agree with that statement. And thus you can broach the conversation of, maybe we should pursue this further. And Scott, you were dead on when you said, just make a note and come back. That's exactly how I train the agents, is to make a notation. Don't worry about the annuity today. Come back for that next month or even next week, but don't worry about closing it because you're not going to. You're not on that first call. So let's see. Scott's going to put the deals together with you. You got a professional, and it's good money for you as an agent, and especially as time goes on, if you're selling a lot of Medicare Advantage, I don't know if you know, Scott, but those commissions grade down every month, and they don't make as much money through the course of the year. You're going to need this type of hit. That's why I'm always pushing this progression of products from the Medicare to the final expense to the indemnity and finally the annuity. Because you need to be a professional and make money. And this is one way to do it. Scott, you want to wrap it up? Anything you got to say?
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. One thing about the guys that are really successful out there in that Med Sup Med Advantage market, if you have so many clients that you get semi-lazy on that, hire somebody else to do this type of thing in your agency, and I'll train them, because you're missing out on a lot by, it's great that you have the renewals built up and you don't have to do much other than sustain, but it's you're missing the boat if you don't have somebody else in your office helping you get in front of those clients, because they're all going down the street to the other financial
because advisor. Money is there. If you're working the numbers, you are walking past money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's happening. It is happening. You've already walked past a bunch of it.
Exactly. So Nick's got my number. Feel free to reach out, introduce yourself. Even if you want to pick a brain, I definitely appreciate it. I'm here to help you guys, and let's rock and roll in 2020.
Okay. Well, I'm going to end it right there.